Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Please, if you are excited, can we fill the front rows,
Come
please?
on, yes.
If you are excited being here with us, please join us, fill the front rows.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Good photos. As usual.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aishka Najib, and I'm a climate justice activist based in the UAE. And I want to start off giving you all a warm welcome to our side event on feminist climate justice demands from the MENA region, featuring some incredible panelists. Featuring incredible panelists across the MENA region. So quickly, this event will be about, showcasing regional experiences of climate change and key movement strategies ahead of COP28 from the Middle East and North Africa region. So speakers will present cross-cutting themes, including conflict and climate impacts on food security, fossil fuel phase-out, resilience, and more, especially through a gender lens. That is very much needed. So before we kick off into our side event, I want to say that we have a very special person on our panel today, who is Dr. Priscilla from Nigeria, who is the founder and global lead for Women Environmental Program, and also one of the founding members of the African Feminist Task Force of the Women and Gender Constituency. So please give a round of applause for Dr. Priscilla. I want to invite Dr. Priscilla to come and set the scene, to share all the incredible work that the African Feminist Task Force did last year at COP27, and to have an official handover to the MENA Task Force that we will begin. So power to you now, Dr. Priscilla.
Thank you very much. I'm indeed excited to be here. And just to think of it, that to be handing over to MENA region, I mean, that is incredible. Please, can we clap for that? Thank you very much. Just a short beginning of how the African Task Force, Feminist Task Force, started 2 years ago, not just last year. We actually started January 2021. Yeah, 2022. 2022. And when we started, the COP was happening in Egypt. And we felt that for the first time, the African women needed to be properly organized. Our organizing means not just at the regional level, but also bringing in the voices of the grassroots women organizations to the sub-regional and to the regional, and to be properly coordinated. We didn't do this alone. The Women and Gender Constituency fully supported the African Feminist Task Group to be able to start off this journey. And so we had several meetings, online meetings, and several ideas came about of specifically what issues we wanted to address, because COP27 was called the African COP. And so if COP27 was called African COP, what were the voices of the most marginalized, and of course African feminists, be as such COP? And so we began to organize. And organizing, we had several meetings online, but we also had regional meetings from Accra to Feminist organized another one, I think in Zimbabwe. And a lot of capacity was being built. Altogether, we had over 150 grassroots organizations participating in all these activities. Capacities of feminist women, grassroots organizations were built. And of course, we did not just stop at that, we also brought in the negotiators whom we felt that even if we're talking about ensuring that our voices and our issues are integrated into the negotiations, it means that we have to bring the negotiators on board. So we convened in Accra, where we have our gender coordinator for Africa and key coordinators of the various thematic areas that were in Accra to also support our aspirations, to support our points, to support our positions to be integrated into the AGN position papers. And at the end of the day, we were very happy and optimistic that we had a charter of demands of about 17 demands. One of them was loss and damage, which of course we can say that that was, the decision was taken at COP27. So that was one of the achievements that we recorded. And the second one, several other ones, the issues of just transition, the issues of fossil fuel, and we had several campaigns while we were at COP27. We had press conferences, we organized side events, where we were able to showcase what was happening on the African continent with videos, documentaries that were being shown. And we joined the other feminist groups around the world to participate in rallies. But most importantly, the issues of coordination cannot be overemphasized. At this point, I just want to say thank you to Mishi and my sister Zukiwas, and Bridget from the Women and Gender Consistency, who supported us very much to coordinate, and other feminist organizations such as WECF. Without the support from the Global North and from the Global South, we wouldn't have been able to achieve what we achieved. Today, in Africa, and of course the AGM, has recognized that there are so many expertise from the continent. They have recognized that they can tap in from the weight of experience from the African Feminist Task Group. They have recognized that we're a voice to reckon with. We are preparing for the regional workshops, which is happening very soon in Nairobi in September. And of course, we are working with the AGM on how we can be a strong force at that workshop. And so for us, there were challenges there, but of course, when you are properly coordinated and when you have the support of one another, you can overcome any obstacles that is there. And that is what happened with the African Feminist Task Group. We are stronger together, and stronger we will continue to achieve. So today, I'm happy to say that we are handing over to the MENA region, and you can always count on us to support you all the way up to COP28. At any point in time you need us, we're here. Some of the African Feminist Task Group are here. Please, can you get up for recognition? Where is Zonzo? Where are you? Yeah. John. Some of them could not make it because of the visa issue that we had. This bond was crazy. A lot of people could not get visa or even get a date to be able to attend for the visa interview. And so many of them were unable to be here. But just to say that it's a very good experience that we had. And going forward, I think that, just as I said, if the MENA region wants our support, we are all here to support you all the way to make sure that we record success, because whatever that happens in the MENA region or in other regions, know that it's all about feminism. It's all about the issues that we're advocating, even though the issues we're advocating might differ from continent to continent and from national circumstances. But all we want is a stronger voice. And with stronger voices, we can achieve so much. So thank you very much. And perhaps we get up and hug each other for the handover. All around the world. I forgot to say. I will sing it later. So over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priscilla. And I think something that you clearly mentioned is that with all the structural and systemic oppression women and all their diversity face, whether from African region to the MENA region, what we are all here today is to fight for a collective liberation and a safe and secure place for the people and the planet. So thank you so much for setting the scene. And now we want to move on to play. And now we want to move on to play a quick video that captures the work the African Feminist Task Force did at COP27.
WTC is one of the 9 constituencies under UNFCCC. We saw the need to create a feminist space within the UNFCCC mechanism so that women in all their diversity can find ways in which they can collectively engage, advocate, in making sure the decision that comes from UNFCCC are gender transformative, one, and their solutions are amplified within those spaces. Last year, Women in Gender Constituency supported the formation, development, and support of the African Feminist Task Force.
I'm really proud that we're able to come together as African Feminist Task Force on Climate Justice because it was bringing together the unheard voices. We're also able to come up with a common position and the demands that really took into account the lived realities of women and girls in all their diversity who are the front line of the climate crisis.
So the African Feminist Task Force asked for 27 demands. These demands were broadly grouped, I think, into 6 categories.
There are great lessons to learn from how the African Feminist Task Force raised awareness to bring visibility and educate the public. We realized to also engage with African gender negotiators and create that moment where there was dialogue between civil society and the African gender negotiators. The second major achievement was the fact that regardless of our differences, our diversity, we were able to come together and build that momentum towards COP27.
Maintenant, à la fin, il faut évaluer qu'est-ce qu'on a eu. On avait 27 revendications et maintenant, qu'est-ce que nous avons à la fin de la COP27? Nous avons eu quelque chose parce que les plans d'action genre ont été pris en compte. Mais il reste, quand on fait le plan d'action genre, il reste à avoir les ressources pour le mettre en œuvre. Donc, je pense que c'est à ce niveau que nous devons encore travailler. Surtout aussi à bien regarder les compensations pour les pertes et préjudices. Là, il faut qu'on regarde encore une plateforme beaucoup plus ambitieuse et pour qu'on puisse avoir à la COP28 encore beaucoup d'avancées.
One thing that we really learned is starting early and engagement and full participation also means creating spaces where we are learning, but also spaces where we are also allowing expression of the impacts, understanding the language and the technicalities and the tactics that we need to use to be able to influence political process.
The challenge is how do we break that silo between civil society and the state, who are actually those who negotiate on our behalf, building that trust. And we saw that there is need for that continuous conversation with the gender negotiator because there is that divide because of the lack of understanding.
This year, MENA region will host the COP. So from Africa, where COP27 was hosted last year in Egypt, to UAE, where COP28 will be hosted, we as WGC, we were ready to support the transition of African feminists and handing over the leadership to the MENA feminists from COP27 to COP28.
Et nous pensons aussi cette dynamique que nous avons créée et du Moyen-Orient, des féministes du MENA, pour les aider à impulser cette même dynamique et nous allons ensemble faire quelque chose pour l'Afrique. Et nous pensons que la langue ne devra pas être une barrière. Parce que déjà, nous, dans le groupe de travail des féministes, nous avons des anglophones, nous avons des francophones, nous avons des lusophones. Et la langue ne nous a pas empêchés d'être ensemble et de fédérer nos revendications.
The momentum should not just slow down, rather we have to intensify how we build around raising awareness, climate education, and also building that movement around advocating for a strong feminist climate outcome from COP.
That was absolutely incredible. I think we should give one more round of applause for all the work that the African Feminist Task Force has done. Now, the impacts of climate change, as we all know, and natural disasters are not gender neutral, but rather it obviously amplifies existing gender inequalities in relation to socioeconomic and political status, land rights, livelihoods, health, domestic labor, gender-based violence, safety, and security, with the most marginalized and vulnerable communities experiencing the greatest impact of it all. The Middle East and North Africa region has been facing a range of crises, including economic disparities, conflict, and climate change, which have deepened socio-economic and environmental issues. Climate change poses a significant threat to human development gains, with marginalized communities disproportionately affected by rising temperatures, droughts, and water scarcity, which is a big issue in the region. In addition, countries in conflict-affected contexts in the region are also among the world's hot spots for climate risks. And 12 out of 17 most water-stressed countries in the world are located in the MENA region. To understand how climate change affects gender differently, we must ponder upon vulnerability, exposure, sensitivity, adaptive opportunities, resilience, as well as leadership. And speaking about leadership, please allow me to introduce amazing women in the MENA region who are leading great work on the intersections of climate and gender equality. So first, we have Fatima Khafagi from Egypt, who is a co-convener of Arab States, Civil Society, and Feminist Network. Please give a round of applause to Fatima. Then besides me, we have Azal Al-Salafi from Yemen, who works as a protection and advocacy officer at the Peace Track Initiative. Last but not the least, we have Muna Al-Hamadi from Yemen, who's the head of partnership at Nabat organization based in Yemen. Now, please take the power, Fatima, and share with us more about how climate change is affecting in the MENA region.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Women Gender Climate Group. Thank you, everybody, and very good morning to all of you. I want to thank also my sisters from Africa, being Egyptian myself, for all the work and collaboration and support and solidarity you gave us in Sharm el-Sheikh in COP27. So thank you so much, and another applause to you. Well, in the few minutes I want to talk to you about three things briefly. The situation related to climate change in the MENA region, how and why does it affect women in certain ways, and also the role played by civil society and feminist groups to make the voice of women in the MENA region heard, to make their concerns, their role also played to be recognized, which is not recognized, and also their needs to be taken into consideration. Maybe the MENA region, like other regions, are experiencing almost all adverse effects of climate change, including floods, droughts, scarcity of water, rising levels, sea levels, food scarcity, and river pollution, and rise of temperature. On the rise of temperature, because we already have, very hot temperature in many of the Arab countries, so it is expected that the region will average temperatures rise of 4 degrees by end of the 21st century. Already in 2020, the hottest temperatures worldwide were reported in Kuwait and Iraq. The region also suffers from armed conflict, and for several decades now, and suffers from occupation. Just to give an example, in Palestine, for example, Israel controls 80% of the water from the West Bank aquifers. In Gaza, people are denied access to 20% of arable agricultural land, which is in the buffer zone delineated by Israel. The armed conflict coupled by the climate change also a result of having millions of migrants, refugees, displaced people, majority of which are women and children, and they suffer a lot because they are deprived of services and also of finance to face the crisis that they are facing. In addition, also, if we look at the MENA region, the climate discussion is very much complicated by some countries in the region possessing huge global crude oil resources, and others lack the wealth and live in poverty, which makes also, politically it becomes a bit complicated, when negotiating and when agreeing on certain issues. Why and how and why all this affect women in the region? Let me talk about maybe 3 issues only. First of all, I want to talk about female illiteracy in the region. Actually, the region is known to be having the highest female illiteracy rate, which accounts to 26%. In Egypt, which is known, for female education for centuries now, we still have, millions of women who are still illiterate. They count to over 10 million women who are still illiterate in Egypt. In a country like Sudan, 45% of women aged 15 to 24 years are also illiterate. If we talk about, and also countries that are suffering from armed conflict like Syria, Iraq, which actually they achieved before the armed conflict high rates of female literacy. Now this is very much decreasing, and they're having also high rates of female illiteracy. I'm talking about this because, with lack of climate education in almost all countries of the region, and also with the very, very little information reaching marginalized women like rural women, like migrant women, refugee women, and all this, very little information is reaching them. And I see that, the whole discussion is just very scientific, only reaching those who really know much about climate change, but the women who should be also knowing it, are not really reached with information at all. Although, television is quite spread, majority of people have access to television, but also it's not used actually to reach women with simple language about, what is happening in the globe and how can they protect themselves, how can they actually play a role in all this. The second issue I want to talk about is the feminization of agriculture in the region. Many countries of the region depend on agriculture. And actually the agriculture work, over 60% of it is done by women. So women are working either as unpaid workers for the family, or they are paid like agriculture workers with minimal pay, without actually any protection. They don't have, health insurance. They don't have any sort of social protection. And they do all this work because men prefer actually to migrate to cities. They prefer to do other things other than agriculture. But the point is that women are not owning the land they cultivate. It's men who are owning this land. It is estimated like less than 10% of the land in the region owned by women. So they have no control whatsoever on decisions related to the agricultural land, which is very much affected by climate change. In Egypt, for instance, it's only 5% of the agricultural land owned by women. In Lebanon, it's 7%, and in Saudi Arabia, I think it's 8%. So when it comes to decision like change the crop mix, change also the irrigation methods, women are not in a position to take any decision concerning this, and they are also not benefiting from any finance directed to this. The third issue I want to talk about is the unpaid care economy, care work that women are undertaking in the region. So women are still, because of norms and tradition and because of lack of also services, social services, women are still the ones who are responsible to take care of all the care work inside the family, with no help whatsoever, with no attempts also to change all these norms and inviting men that this is not a strict role for women without their participation whatsoever, and without also addressing national budgets and to see or apply gender budgeting and to see if there is any percentage going actually for services that really can ease out the burden taken by women, and with the climate change, so she becomes actually responsible for all this, for providing, the resources, the food, and all that for the family. So to sum up, actually, the region has more than 25% of the whole population who live under poverty line, and most of it, actually the majority of it, are women. And the gender inequality also is inherent in the lack of women and lack of access and control of resources, natural resources like land, water, and scarcity of livelihood opportunities, and minimal or no participation at all sometimes in decision making, and also lack of adequate finance. But on the bright side, and in spite of all this, we find out the civil society, I mean, although there is actually a shrinking space very much in the region for civil society, and we can notice this very much in the different COPs in the region. I mean, really, one can see so many activities done in the region and also by feminist groups. So they are very much working with vulnerable groups of women and children in order to make their voices heard and their needs taken into consideration, and to also address the injustice, because justice cannot be achieved if it ignores more than half of the population in the region. I just want to give one example of the work of feminist work done in the region. Well, I'm privileged actually to be a co-convener of a large network of almost 60 feminist NGOs from 13 Arab countries. And one of our major focus is actually to have the voice of women heard with relation to climate change, especially that they are doing a lot which is unrecognized until now. And I mean, we've been trying to provide, education and information to marginalized groups of women about climate change in simple language to rural, migrant, and illiterate women. We're also trying to build the capacity of women NGOs in all aspects of climate change. We produce research, policy papers in order to use in lobbying with our governments. And we also organize regional meetings. For example, last year, because many feminists NGOs wanted to participate in Sharm el-Sheikh, but they didn't have the chance. Actually, they were not accredited. And I mean, in the region also, we have sort of gongos, if you heard about it, which is governmental NGOs. So it's always the governmental NGOs that are being recognized to participate. So what we've done, we have organized a regional meeting in Jordan, especially for NGOs that were not allowed to go to Sharm el-Sheikh, to discuss and have their demands to be, spread and shared in Sharm el-Sheikh. And also we had a regional meeting in Cairo right after Sharm el-Sheikh in order to be informed by those who have attended from all over the globe what happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, so that they can build on what happened to also prepare themselves for COP28. Lastly, I just want to give some of the examples of the demands that were put by feminist NGOs in COP27. There were so many demands, actually, because there's so many needs to be fulfilled, but the few I want to focus on, they asked for a gender perspective that should exist in all plans, programs and projects related to climate change in the countries of the region. Secondly, they said women should be in all decision-making in all matters and all levels related to climate change, and they should also participate in all forums, delegations, and negotiations. Thirdly, they asked for considering the militarization impact on the environment and asked to reduce the budgets allocated to militarization and allocate instead this budget to mitigation and adaptation. Women in the region are still fighting and calling for a stop to they don't want to be looked at as victims of climate change, because, the atmosphere that they are getting in many of the countries, they are looked only as victims. They are doing a lot that is not recognized at the forefront, and they have the skills and their perseverance, and the feminist groups are calling for the need of government to seriously address the double challenges women are facing, because the lack of climate justice and the lack of gender justice are really the main challenges. They are calling for designing climate transformative finance that also incorporates end of gender inequality of access to social and physical goods. and also address gender gaps in education, income, overcome discrimination and differentiation of roles and responsibilities and stereotyping of women in the household, community, and labor markets. So they are really stressing the fact that without also addressing all the gender inequalities in the region, I mean, we cannot achieve any any gender justice in climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for setting such a clear explanation on how the climate crisis is affecting the Middle East and North Africa region and how it disproportionately impacts the women in all their diversity in the region. But along with it, I think something that came out so clearly from what you shared with us is that we cannot continue to view the climate crisis in silos. It is intersectional, it intersects with socioeconomic justice, gender justice, and it is so important to view it from this multiple lenses. And another important thing that I feel like you shared is the fact that, you know, women in the Middle East and North Africa region have been leading a revolution for so long, and we will continue to lead that revolution, especially with the demands that we will work on implementing them. And I hope that people can stand in solidarity with us as we navigate the different contexts and demographies that we're set in to fight for climate justice. And one thing that came out, really stuck out to me, is that justice delayed will be justice denied. And that's something that we need to step up our game for. Now I would like to pass the power to Azil Al-Salafi to take on.
Thank you. Thank you, Aishka. Dr. Priscilla, I just want to say that we are honored to carry on the torch of feminist work, and to expand the conversation on the MENA region that has been neglected for so long. We tremendously learn from the feminist experience, the African feminist experience, and we appreciate your guidance as we seek collective justice. I would like to start, first of all, by a question, and I would like to ask the audience if they have heard about the FSO Safir tanker in the Red Sea. Just, wow, I love this. Amazing. My second question is, have you heard about this in this session, the SB 58? No. Okay, this is wonderful as well. It's good. So I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Azal, a lawyer and a researcher specializing in restorative justice and intersectional feminist policies. I am the protection and advocacy officer at the Peace Track initiative that focuses on localizing and feminizing the peace processes through promoting inclusion and enhancing feminist knowledge leadership in the MENA region, and with a focus on Yemen. When we look over the past years, it is crucial that we put on the intersectional lens to understand the context. And this has been neglected throughout the discussion of the SB 58, unfortunately. To give a more concrete, focused context on Yemen, we have witnessed how conflict heavily contributed to the overall global warming and climate instability, and how it exacerbated the existing humanitarian crisis in Yemen, leading to the numerous injustices and dire situation that severely impacts and disproportionately affects women, children, people of determination, internally displaced persons, and minority groups. And I would like to also thank Ms. Fatima for giving us a bird's eye view on the situation on the MENA. And in Yemen, we heavily relate to that, and it reflects us. It reflects also our conflict context. But to give you more information on that, The conflict has already created a hostile environment for women, with increased incidence of gender-based violence. It has exacerbated also the existing social tensions and scarcity of resources, which has led to further incidents of different forms of violence against women and girls, and specifically displaced women who have been exposed to different forms of sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and unfortunately forced child marriages as a form of mechanism in these critical situations. Having a closer look on the militarization and the proliferation of arms in Yemen, we see how significant the impact is on our infrastructure, such as the power plants, factories, transportation networks, and sanitation facilities. Unfortunately, the damage not only hampered the socioeconomic situation, but also led to increased energy consumption and loss of essential services and increased reliance of inefficient and polluting alternatives. As a consequence, loss of basic human rights, such as water and electricity. We have also this subject of the FSO Safar tanker, which is a detrimental issue. It is a tank, for those who don't know, located off the coast of Yemen in the Red Sea. And it possesses a significant environmental threat that could lead to climate catastrophes in the region if not properly addressed and salvaged. The tanker has been abandoned since 2015, the start of the conflict in Yemen, and it carries approximately 3 million barrels of crude oil. The tanker is decaying and deteriorating, and there is high risk of it rupturing, leaking, leading to massive oil spill or explosion. The massive spill would destroy the reefs, the coastal mangroves, and other sea life across the Red Sea, and exposing millions of people in Africa and in the MENA region to highly polluted air, cut off food, fuel, and other life-saving supplies, also exacerbating the socioeconomic challenges in the region and leading to increased poverty and food insecurity. In case of explosion, unfortunately, there will be loss of lives and land. 2 days ago, actually, I stumbled upon a document called The Maritime Mines and Water Security in Yemen and the Role of International Mechanisms for Disarmament Affairs. And I was shocked to see the data, because I worked on mines before, but I never knew that this situation actually existed. So we are now also not facing landmines, but also maritime mines that is further escalating the humanitarian situation. So far, our peace-building talks have been focused on ceasefire and withholding military activities, but it has heavily neglected conversations on the economic and environmental governance. There is also neglect in acknowledging civil society efforts on mediation and technical work, especially that's led by women inside Yemen and in exile. They have addressed the impact of militarization and arms, and they have been successful in attempts to stop armed conflict between the legitimate government and the de facto government in some southern areas. And they have also revived healthy climates and created resources to serve basic human rights. These efforts and positive changes, unfortunately, are not also dealt with in the political conversation, and they are rarely supported by the international community. The Peace Track Initiative, alongside the Women's Solidarity Network, has worked on a feminist peace roadmap, which is a blueprint document providing a guiding framework and a comprehensive agenda with intersectional human rights lens. Through this document, they have addressed the risks and challenges associated with FSO Safar tanker and the presence of mines and other climate crises. And they have worked on recommendations and called for urgent actions from the local and international authorities and communities. Unfortunately, until this day, we are still pushing the agenda. It's been 3 years so far. The action plans, it needs to be at least included in the peace dialogues that are currently happening. Meanwhile, on top of that, we are still demanding for the meaningful inclusion and participation of women and youth in these peace negotiations. We have seen and heard so little about these critical experiences that affect the region in this UNFCCC SB 58 sessions. And unless these scenarios and these discussions happened behind closed doors, then we demand that these closed doors open, let civil society in, let women, youth, experts to be part in the decision making. We need to achieve, you need us to achieve comprehensive approaches that includes conflict resolution, disarmament, sustainable development strategies. You need us to promote peace and stability. You need us to achieve environmental protection and climate change mitigation measures. From our fora and from our international community, we need your solidarity. We need the amplification of MENA voices and Yemeni voices without distorting or whitewashing the narrative and lived experiences. We need international cooperation and assistance that are crucial in supporting efforts to rebuild sustainable infrastructure, restore ecosystem, and promote resilience to climate change impacts and building peace. Lastly, all that I can say here is that there would be a big question regarding the bodies and governments and their mechanisms, transparency. If their so-called enabling environment and meaningful inclusion is not really happening. We are now more motivated, determined, and ready than ever as a feminist force and with human rights values to continue to seek accountability, justice, and peace. Thank you.
Whoa. Thank you so much, Azal, for this incredible intervention and sharing with us why it is so important to look into the nexus between peace and security and the climate crisis, and sharing with us the important work that you are doing with the Peace Track initiative. And if there's one thing that I can say is you have really showed us how women in all their diversity, feminist movements and organizations are experts. They have the solutions with them, and they need to be put in leadership roles. They need to be given meaningful engagement opportunity at the decision-making table because they exist, because it's their lived reality, and because they are doing the work in real time. So thank you for showing us that.
Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Muna Al-Hamadi to take the floor. The power is yours.
Thank you, Aishka.
Tech team.
Hello.
It stopped working.
Hello, everyone. I am Muna Al-Hamadi. I am the head of partnership at NABD organization based in Yemen. And I'm delegated to be with you today speaking about the climate change and the impact of climate change and food security in the MENA region. And I will focus on Yemen as an example of the MENA region. Well, the Middle East and North Africa is among the world's most vulnerable regions when it comes to climate change. The wars from the early 2011 in the Middle East and North Africa region has had profound environmental impacts. Armed conflicts in Yemen, Syria, or Libya has directly contributed to massive environmental damage, whether through the destruction of non-human activities or through the targeting of infrastructure critical to the well-being of civilians, while at the same time making communities less resilient to environmental distress such as droughts or floods, and hinders adoption of the changes required to mitigate and damage of climate change. In addition, governorates and donors or UN agencies in the MENA region prioritize the humanitarian crisis, and they didn't think of climate change as priority. They always focus their interventions on humanitarian crisis. This is make the region response late in the field of climate change, as the climate change is not a priority, especially for the countries where wars happen, like Yemen. The region is projected to experience increasing temperatures, water stress and scarcity, drought, and onset of extreme weather events. MENA is warming at twice the global average, and by 2050, the region could be as much as 4 degrees Celsius warmer. This is way beyond the 1.5 degrees Celsius target set by the Paris Agreement. Droughts and changing rainfall pattern lead to crop failures and rising food prices, which for the poor simply mean less food, and with that, a lifelong impact on populations. Climate change can destroy livelihoods, drive migration, and conflicts. And this is what it's already happened in many areas in the MENA region. Sorry? Oh, the presentation. Okay. In some countries in the region, climate change is aggravating conflicts and violence, with dispute over scarce resources such as water, reduced economic opportunities, and strained public services, and with that forced displacement, including for millions of children and women. Okay, you can go to the other slide. Okay. I will take Yemen as an example. Well, Yemen continues to feel the brunt of climate change risk for several reasons. The first reason is poverty is a very poor country, and the state of the political instability. Yemen is in war from the 2011, and until now there is no political stability. The continued war and fragility, as well as the lack of financial resources to address this problem. Yemen is one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change, and this is evident from the impact on water and agricultural resources, especially in coastal areas. The food security has been a growing challenge in Yemen for many years. The 2021 Global Hunger Index ranked Yemen as the second most food insecure country in the world. The problem has worsened with the continuance of war, water scarcity, low agricultural productivity, degradation of the natural sources, and worsening poverty. The negative effects of climate change are expected to exacerbate this situation, according to the North Dam Global Adaptation Index that measures total climate risk. Yemen is one of the most vulnerable and least prepared for climate include shocks. Yemen is ranked as the Yemen is ranked as the 30th most vulnerable and the 70th least prepared country for climate change effect. And it is the second most food insecure country in the world. talking about women's in Yemen, they are one of the most vulnerable groups that is affected by climate change, especially rural women's. The climate change has severely affected Yemeni women's access to water, food, and energy. In a country marked by war, this negative impact of climate change leaves women vulnerable to the consequence of a lack of vital resources, especially for rural women, who depend almost, you can change the slide, especially for rural women who depend almost entirely on natural and agricultural resources for their livelihood and food. This has exacerbated that already high levels of food insecurity and malnutrition experienced by women and girls. Water insecurity is also a constant source of concern for Yemenis, especially women and girls who are responsible for collecting water. Many women and girls in Yemen, they walk for almost 6 hours a day to collect water, and they go for far distance. We have many girls in Yemen, they left their education and they only focus on how to get water or how to collect water. In this point, the climate change, it's not only affected the food security, it's also affected the education of girls. While others resort to drinking from unclear sources, or if they can afford it, they buy high water delivery fees. It also affects the health of people, like when they drink from unclear source of water, they are exposed to many diseases like cholera, typhoid, and it affects the health also of the people, especially children's. A variation in seasonal precipitation across the country due to climate change lead to soil erosion and environmental degradation, resulting in the loss of fertile topsoil. This directly affects the main source of income of rural Yemenis, who present 70% of the country's population of 30 million. The shortage of animal feed and veterinary services has also led to a decline in animal production, which is a major source of income for many rural families in Yemen. Can you please show the video? Thank you.
من نساء الدول العربية نساء معيلات، مسؤولين بشكل مباشر وكامل عن أسرنا. السنة اللي فاتت خسرت شغلي عشان المزرعة اتسحرت، ولما حاولت أفهم عرفت إن التغير المناخي هو السبب. عشان كده حبيت أكلمكم إزاي التغير المناخي بيأثر علينا كستات وإزاي نقدر نواجهه. التغير المناخي بيأثر بشكل مباشر على قطاعات مهمة زي الزراعة ومصايد الأسماك، والإحصائيات الدولية بتقول إن نص العاملين في المجالات دي من النساء. وآخر قياس لأثر الكوارث المناخية قال إن احتمال وفاة النساء والأطفال أكتر 14 مرة من الرجالة بسببها. وللأسف أسباب كتيرة بتفاقم آثار الكوارث المناخية علينا كنساء، بالأخص في الدول النامية، زي استخدام الدول الكبرى اقتصادياً الوقود الأحفوري في الصناعة، وضرب عرض الحائط باتفاقية باريس واللي نصت صراحة ولأول مرة على تقليل الوقود الأحفوري. إهمال دول المنطقة العربية لمشكلة التغير المناخي، عشان كده مفيش خطط للتعامل معاها أو مع نتائجها السلبية، ومفيش تمويل كافي لتمكين النساء من مواجهة نتائج الكوارث المناخية. عشان كل ده أنا وكل النساء الشبكة العربية للمجتمع المدني النسوي بنطالب بدعم النساء في مواجهة التغير المناخي من خلال وضع سياسات وآليات لتأمين النساء وتعويضهن من آثار التغيرات المناخية، لأن هم الأكثر تأثراً بيها وبنتائجها. التوسع في تطبيق آليات التكيف لضمان حمايتنا كنساء وعدم تعرضنا لمخاطر هذه الكوارث. توفير المعلومات المناخية والاستعداد لمواجهة الكوارث قبل حدوثها. ضرورة مشاركة النساء في مراكز صنع القرار الخاصة بسياسات مواجهة التغير المناخي، ومراعاة احتياجاتنا كأولوية عند تصميم الحلول على مستوى محلي ووطني وإقليمي وعالمي. توجيه تمويل كافي خاص للمنظمات النسوية في ملف التغير المناخي لتمكين النساء من مواجهة الآثار الناتجة عنها.
So rather than just highlight the problems and how can we turn words into action? How can we create solutions for women and for youth also? In addition to the demands that my colleagues that mentioned, I want to highlight some demands. We need as youth to be involved in decision making as youth, and we are the responsible for making the change, and we need to be involved so that we can help our new generation to adapt and mitigate to all the climate change. Also, we need to advocate for climate education for women, girls, and youth, and for the organizations, for the grassroots organizations. Also, we need institution capacity buildings, we need donors to be more flexible, and we need financial support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona, for your intervention and sharing the video, as well as talking to all of the issues that is happening in the Yemen, especially in the agricultural sector, with food insecurity and water scarcity, and how it is disproportionately impacting women, girls, children, young people, and at the same time highlighting all of the leadership and the work that is being mobilized on the ground. And I want to take a minute to give if everyone can give a round of applause for all the young feminists in the MENA region. Who are leading a lot of important work, and often at times as young people we don't get the recognition, and our work goes undervalued. And I do want to add on to something that Mona really mentioned is when we propose a solution and share our ideas, we often patted in the back and said like, hey, you're doing incredible work, keep going. And I think the response that we have, as Mona mentioned, to that exact comment is, thank you, then please fund us. Because it's so important for us to have resources, finance that is flexible, that's sustainable, to continue to do the work that we're doing. And I just want to leave it at that. And I would like to open the floor now to all of our audiences here to ask any question or comment to the wonderful panelists who have just provided interventions. Okay, I see a hand at the back first and then towards the front. So can we have maybe a mic being passed around? It would be amazing before you ask your question, you can share your name, where you're from, your organization, and then ask your question.
Thank you. Is it working? All right, thank you. My name is Mwana Hamisi Singano. I work with WEDO as Global Policy Lead. Mine is not a question really, but thank you to all of you for really giving us a nuanced picture of the region, because often than not, when we hear MENA, we just feel it's just one story of oil producing, shine buildings, and potentially conflict. And I think it will really be important as we go to the COP which is hosted in the region, for all of us to know there's lives, there's women, there's a nuance. It's not just one picture. And thank you for doing an amazing work of painting that picture and putting our bias and really checking our bias and a conscious assumption of what the region really is. And I hope, like, looking at the picture, looking at the audience, I see like some comrade men who are here, but I really hope this conversation could be extended to all civil society, because it's really important for all of us who are going to MENA to have this nuance picture. And thank you for doing amazing work and being here today and sharing the reality in the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. And I think there was a question towards the front. Yes. The first one and then the middle row.
Middle room and then...
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
We're very efficient.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'm Lala Behjad. I'm from Canada right now. I'm an engineer, but I'm originally from Iran. So the past 9 months, we have been, Iranian women and men have been fighting for women freedom, life freedom. And so I just haven't seen anything here. And I was wondering if there are any Iranian women involved with your fantastic work. And if not, how can we become involved?
Marion Glaser from North Germany, working long-term in Brazil and also in Bangladesh. And I hear this, and it's from the MENA and African point of view new to me. But my question is, how are your connections in view of global aims and the kind of things that we want in COPs, the connections to South American women's networks and South Asians? That's the ones I know. And there is great potential to link and to be heard as global women also. I see the enormous need to organize in MENA and in Africa, but these international connections and the things we share are incredibly important. I just have on my email a national action of Brazilian women with environmental and justice concerns just marching all over the country to the capital, and that's half of South America. So these connections, I just wondered how it is and whether one could contribute to those connections.
Thank you. We had the gentleman there, and then Sasha.
Thank you very much. My name is Julien Jaisati. I'm from Lebanon. I work for Greenpeace MENA. I want to first, I want to commend you on all your very inspiring and humbling work. My question is to you, Ms. Hazal. I was very happy that you mentioned FSO Safar. We've been campaigning on it for 2 years. And I think it's a very good example linking fossil fuel to conflict in one sense, but also something that has been very underreported. And my question to you is, if this is a narrative in Yemen, is because it's very often presented as a local conflict or regional conflict, and it is very underreported the role of international corporation in that conflict, especially that one of our investigations showed that international oil companies like Total, like Exxon, like OMV, who have been exploiting Yemeni resources, especially in the Marid Basin, has been using the FSO Safar and are likely owner of the oil on board the Safar and are nowhere to be seen. And the UN have been struggling to raise the funds, knocking on government's doors and even launching a crowdfunding platform for people to donate, which is crazy because polluters should be paying, not the people. So, and they haven't put really money in that, like maybe a bit of tiny money where they're counting their billions of dollars of revenues. So my question is this a narrative currently in Yemen around FSO Safar? Because we've been trying to also kind of elevate that reality, and right now it's not being really picked up internationally, unfortunately. And in the Arab world, even the Arab media are not that much reporting on Safar, even less, I would say, the international media. So how is that narrative in Yemen?
I think we have time for 2 more questions, please.
Yeah, hi, Sasha from Women Engage for a Common Future. Yeah, my question is, what can we do as members of the Women and Gender constituency? Do you have any specific demands we could try to prepare and get to the attention of the presidency? Would it be around the FSO oil tanker, which is stranded? Would it be around, having parity in women on all delegations from the region? Or, what 1 or 2, 3 things you would really feel we should help you with and support?
Hi, my name is Sadie. I'm also from Greenpeace MENA, and I wanted to ask the panel if you see that there is a potential, or like what is the possibility of like adopting feminist values within the climate movement, and what kind of values you feel that we need to work on, and how can the climate movement benefit from bringing all the knowledge and experience from the feminist movement?
Asking you, yeah.
I think we can start with the answers and then see if we have more time. So maybe we can go a little bit backwards, because in terms of the Iranian women's engagement that you asked, we have a whole segue section to that towards the end. So hopefully you can wait with us. So I think we'll start with talking about the oil tanker and the international cooperation. You can comment more on that, and obviously we will address the question on the how can climate movement learn from the feminist movement.
Thank you all for your questions and interventions. There's honestly a lot to cover, and this session is not enough, but I'll try to be brief in my answers. With regards to, first of all, our global aims, we have learned a lot from the different partners that we partner with in terms of capacity building, working on security, working on the protection and the feminist peace in the region. We are partners with, for example, the Women's International Peace League for Peace and Freedoms. So we have a lot of lessons learned from Colombia, from Iran, from Iraq, from not only the Western world, but rather across the globe. And you can, basically it's just, research. And I understand that the MENA region is very underrepresented, like Mr. here, he's notified us that media is very heavily influenced and politicized on the region. So it needs dedication and, personal effort for you to go and read about our work and our feminist movements, I would say. With regards to the FSO, and yes, it is unfortunately heavily underreported, and these conversations are happening behind closed doors, and there is corruption in terms of addressing and distributing the resources of this, critical situation. There is now currently the problem of, as I said, the distribution of the tank itself. Who is going to lead the distribution? Who's going to lead the distribution? Who's going to be part of this negotiation? It's still very, as I said, in a closed space. And our efforts as women, we try as much as possible to further the agenda, the feminist agenda that we have provided in the Feminist Peace Roadmap. And I hereby also answer your question. We have received an enormous support from the WGC, and we are thankful for your unconditional care, not only support. Basically, we mostly in our work as MENA and in focus of Yemen, we would like support in furthering the agenda of the Feminist Peace Roadmap, because it's a guiding framework and an action plan for people from the international community and the local community to work together to achieve the peace process. Yes. We can talk after that on the details, but I will go ahead with Ms. Fatima.
Yes, Fatima, please.
Okay, how can we also actually link and collaborate internationally? What I want to give an example, like the network of the Arab States CSOs and Feminist Network. We are linking with a global network, run by Global Justice Now in the UK, which has many actually partners from South America, from Europe, from Africa, and so on. And to tell you the truth, also having events virtually help us very much, because there are limits to what we can do in several of the countries in the MENA region. But virtually we do collaborate as much as we can and is allowed actually as well. On the Sasha's question of what demands you can carry to the presidency of COP28, we want to see women in the region in the picture. We don't see women. We don't see women in the delegation. We don't see civil society. And this is obvious even when I attend the government consultations. Most of the delegations from the non-MENA region are women and talking, and very few women from the region are allowed. We want to have women in the picture because they can be, valuable also partners and can make demands very obvious. I want to come to Iran because I'm sure you know, with all this problems of division of geographical regions. Would Iran fit into the MENA region? Would it fit with the Arab countries or not? Plus all the political tension also between some of the MENA region and Iran. But certainly for civil society and certainly for women's groups and all this, they're most welcome in any of our feminist networks in the MENA region. So we welcome them, and we welcome any clues of how we can really get in touch. Thank you.
If I can pass it to, Dr. Priscilla.
Okay, just to respond to some of the questions like link and how to collaborate internationally. We realized when we started to mobilize from the African Feminist Task Group, we realized that we could not do it all by ourselves. And so we had to network with the other major groups, the other constituencies that are within the UNFCCC, but also we have to think outside of the box. Thinking outside the box, who are those that are there that we are going to be our allies, and how can they support us? And so it was on that basis that we were able to collaborate with everybody, but most critically, we wanted our demands to be received by our negotiators. And so how can we get our demands received by our negotiators? One of the lessons was that we had to invite them to a kind of stakeholders discussion and training for them to understand the perspective where we're coming from and where they're coming from. And so that together they will be able to understand each other. And when we present our demands to them, at least they will be able to pick some. And so I also encourage the MENA region that this is very important, that you cannot just do it all by yourself. You need to involve your negotiators from the region, but also target those that are very critical. And if it is possible, because apart from the fact that we invited them to be part of this training and to understand the issues that we're articulating, while at COP27, we also had an event which we invited them to come and share some kind of insight of what was going on. So these are some of the lessons that we need to learn from each other. I just wanted to chip in on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add that it is important that we work with different stakeholders from as well as global movements and bring in our perspective and dialogue, because we can definitely learn from each other. And in terms of how we can look towards feminist movements, there is a lot of feminist movements that are doing incredible work, that have done incredible work, and there's eco-feminist movements. And I think one of the main priority is to look towards the collective liberation, to look towards that it is intersecting systems of oppression, to look towards a decolonial lens on these topics, to take down the patriarchy and not the planet. And on that note, if that motivated anyone in this room, I would like to tell that all of you are welcome to join the Women and Gender Constituency, especially the MENA folks in this room. From all the different parts, we do have the MENA Feminist Task Force. We're only starting it up. We know that there are several regions missing, several lived realities missing. So please come join us so that we can shape the pathway forward together in collaboration and in solidarity with each other. There is a listserv. You will get daily emails and our meetings where we will focus on strategy, advocacy, and actions, next steps. We have a signal group where we continue our discussion. We have Zukiswa. Can you stand up, please? Yes! We have Zukiswa who helps us in coordinating all of these. So please reach out to Zukiswa if you want to join the MENA Feminist Task Force, be part of our work forward. Thank you so much to our incredible speakers here today for showing up, for telling your stories and sharing your lived realities. The work you do is so important. And I hope that everyone in this room can take with you that, women, they're not just vulnerable to the climate crisis, they're leaders, they're resilient. Exactly. We are resilient, we are shaping solutions, and we are, creating blueprints and pathways forward. Look towards the young, the feminist peace tracker initiative. And I would also recommend looking towards the Young Feminist Manifesto. And thank you so much for showing up. Thank you, everyone.
I think we can give them better than that. Can we just take a picture really quickly? Yeah. Can we just have a quick last slide just for a picture with the panelists? Sorry, go there.